Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here, the 3 Topics Gamer here to share with you another of my worst best ranking videos to share with you guys today. Now, as it currently stands right now, I'm currently working on the script to my Final Fantasy XVI review, as well as a part 2 to my convention set of videos that I plan to upload over the next, hopefully, short period of time. And I certainly just wanted to get a quick ranking video before I got my review up for Final Fantasy 16, because I actually was able to beat Final Fantasy 16 last week before my trip, but I just had to focus on going on my trip, then coming back, getting the footage, and so I just want to get this video up as soon as I can before I get too busy. So if you have enjoyed this little video by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to track me on my future videos. And remember, if you have any ideas for future reviews or ranking videos or reaction videos or just discussion videos in general, please let me know what you would like me to go over and discuss in the comments down below, and I will try to get them up as soon as I can. So before I start, just wanted to give a little heads up. Icons are pretty much what summonings are called in Final Fantasy 16. There are 8 of them. They all have different special abilities in terms of how they're used. And just my ranking is just going to be an overall just viewpoint of not only how they were important, their significance in the story, and then just my overall thoughts on the powers that you got once you collected them and how useful I thought they were. So that's kind of just giving an overall breakdown of just each individual icon and just what I thought of them overall over the course of Final Fantasy 16. And as a fair warning, this video will have spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled too much, make sure you beat the game first and come back first. But I'm not going to spoil too much. I'm just going to go over key points for each individual icon just to kind of express my point as for why I would place each of them in the spot that they're in. So now that that is out of the way, let's start with what I consider to be my least favorite icon in Final Fantasy 16. Taking the number 8 spot, without question, undebatably, the worst icon in this game has to go to Shiva. Sorry, there's just no getting around this. I love Jill as a character. I think she is a perfect companion to Clive, not just character-wise, but just aesthetically, which, I thought it was just kind of obvious because of even their clothes color pattern just fit together, because Clive was wearing red and black and she was wearing blue and white, so obviously they were made for each other. But as much as I like her as a character, she is not very good as a dominant. I believe that Shiva only makes 3 appearances over the course of this game, and each time Shiva shows up, she either loses or is put in a supportive role. Shiva is just not very powerful. I mean, over the 3 times that we actually see her being used, it's very much made clear that in her first appearance, when she goes against Titan, that Titan took her down. The second time you see her, she's in a supporting role, and even the primary fire monster that she's supposed to encounter is clearly stronger than she is, and she's put in a supportive role where she has to put this wall of ice around Clive, while Clive has to fight this fire monster. And then the third time you see her, when she takes on Barnabas, he manages to take her down without even needing to transform. And so at that point, Jill just kind of just says, just go take my power and use it however you need to. But to be fair, once I got Shiva's powers, there was nothing about her abilities that I thought was very useful. I already had better versions of all of her powers and abilities. Shiva's primary ability that you can't switch out is this little dash ability that allows you to jump from kind of zip to left to right. The problem is that not only is Phoenix Swift, which is your primary power that you can't get rid of anyway, because that's the power you're stuck with the whole quarter of the game, not only is that better, but your basic dodge button function works just fine. Trust me, you will never need to dodge too much to the left, too much to the right to dodge attacks in this game. So once you realize that, you find out that just Shiva, just personally for me, just had nothing that I thought was very useful and effective. And so I tried using Shiva once, and I just felt no need for her. So she wasn't very useful in a practical sense with her powers, and I just didn't think Shiva was very effective in the story. And heck, this character could have only popped up once and I wouldn't have really noticed. So that's why, unfortunately, Shiva has to take the lowest spot on my list, which I think is very ironic, because over the course of Final Fantasy's history, Shiva has always been seen as the polar opposite or the opponent of Ifrit. And Ifrit is just so important in this game. So the fact that the very bottom of the list goes to Shiva is just kind of unfortunate, but undeniable in my opinion. Taking the number 7 spot on my list is another one that I think might surprise some people that play this game, but my 7th spot has to go to Barnabas's Odin. Now, they make it very clear to kind of state that Odin is by far one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful dominant in the game under the main enemy in the game. And you do get to see him be used pretty effectively over the course of the game, and Barnabas himself is extremely powerful, even when he's not transformed. I just felt the disappointing aspect of Odin is that you never actually get to take on Odin in a straight up fight. You get to fight Garuda, you get to fight Titan, you get to fight Bahamut, you get to fight. I think that's about it. I think those are the only icons you actually do. It's Garuda, it's Titan, it's Bahamut. I think that's about it. I mean, you technically get to fight Ifrit if you control Phoenix, but that's beside the point. But I was really disappointed that when you actually get to take on Barnabas, you don't actually get to directly fight Odin. I found that just kind of disappointing. But I do acknowledge that Odin as a character was very, very threatening. So every time Odin popped up, you knew things were going to get serious. And then when you get Odin's powers, I think it was an interesting choice that he has a lot of really powerful attacks that need to be charged up first. So, like, the primary ability when you get Odin is that you have to charge up his sword. So you actually are using Odin's sword to charge up, and then you can use one of your special abilities. And those are incredibly powerful. I just think the only thing that holds it back is I was really desperate to get an Odin fight. I mean, when I compare it to the other fights, that when you get to fight Bahamut, and then you get to fight Titan in reverse orders, I was expecting a fight on that level of quality. And unfortunately, you just don't get that. And that's really the only thing that kind of puts it just lowest on the list, because past that point, I was using Odin's powers a bit, but I wasn't using them as much as prior powers that I had already taken from previous Icon battles. So that is unfortunately why, while he's far more important to the story than someone like Shiva, just in a practical sense, once you're past that point, he just kind of loses his significance. But again, he's still a great character, but still just kind of low on my list. Taking the number 6 spot on my list is also going to possibly surprise some people, but it has to go to Cid's Rama. This was surprising because I really like Cid as a character. I was very much surprised that unfortunately Cid doesn't get to stay with us as long as I had hoped, which was a surprise, and I was a bit disappointed that Cid didn't get to stay with us a bit longer. But Rama as a icon doesn't even show up much in the game. I think he shows up probably almost the second least. I think Rama only pops up twice, and all he does is he does one basic attack and then he goes away. I will say that his power abilities, once you get the power for Rama, are pretty effective, and you get them pretty early on in the game. And I would say once you have like the primary 3, like you'll have, like, once you get Rama, you'll have like your first set of 3 powers that you can use at once. His were probably the least that I used the most, but they were pretty powerful. I did hold on to them a good amount. I think my only issue with Rama is I just, much like Odin, I just wish that they had just done more of his character. I really wish, I will say this, the only one disappointing aspect I have with the icon battles is I just wish that you could control more than 2 over the course of the game. You only get to control Ifrit and Phoenix. I think I would have given Shiva more points if there was like a moment where I can control Shiva or use her in a fight, but that doesn't happen, or use Rama in a fight. That would have been cool. But outside of that, I think he's just kind of in the middle of the pack. We just don't get to see him as much. And then once you get like future powers, Rama's powers aren't really as useful or as effective as others as you get over the course of the game. But I would still say he's kind of in the middle. It's just Rama as a character just didn't have much of a presence, which is unfortunate, which is why he has to get the number 6 spot on my list. All right, taking the number 5th spot is gonna have to go to Hugo Kupka, I believe that's how you say it, and he is the dominant for the icon of Titan. Now, I will say this, I'm on the fence as for which boss fight in this game was my favorite. It is almost a dead tie between the Titan fight and the Bahamut fight. Because I think both of those fights go through the most amount of stages, and that's what made those 2 fights stand out the most. But I think I have to put Titan a little bit down simply because, just like Shiva's abilities and Odin's abilities, once you have them, I personally did not really feel the need to use them as much in combat. The primary ability that you have is be able to put up Titan's arms to block. The problem is that I'm very much a very offensive type player in Final Fantasy 16, so I didn't block too much. I was very much on the offensive and staying as evasive as possible. And while Titan has a good amount of extra powers, by that point, once I actually got the powers of Titan, I already had powers that I thought were just more useful for my particular play style. But again, I do think that Hugo Kupka was a very, very endearing character. Very had amazing presence, and the Titan fight is absolutely incredible. I will say this: by far, the best thing that this game for me is going to be remembered for are the icon battles, and this one in particular really stands out. This fight was better than the final boss fight of the game. I mean, that's how incredible it was alongside Bahamut. So I really need to sit down and think as to which one I thought was better. But as a whole, I do think that Titan just kind of sits at the not quite breaking, just kind of edging out the top 5 of this list, but still absolutely incredible. I just wish his powers were a bit more useful for my particular playstyle. That's the only thing that kind of holds him back, but still just incredible icon, without question. Taking the number 4 spot on my list has to go to Benedicta's Garuda. Much like Sid, I was absolutely shocked that this character did not get to stay with us longer, because I thought that there was a lot of potential for this character to stay with us longer. I mean, if you're gonna remove these characters from the story, I would have preferred it to be much later on in the story than as earlier as it was. I think Benedicta, out of all the characters, is the one who I believe fits the best in the middle in terms of their significance to the story, their usefulness in combat, and then the icon battle itself. I believe the icon battle itself is technically the second one that you get once you take control of Ivor for the first time as Clive. That's actually the first fight that you have, and it's pretty basic. It's not one of the better ones. It pretty much sets the standard for what icon battles in this game are. So everything about Garuda pretty much sits right in the middle. I think it has probably my third favorite set of powers to use in terms of combat. I know I was using Garuda all the way to the end of the game, and it has a lot of fast-paced offensive attacks, and its mega attack allows you to summon this massive tornado that just constantly does a wave of damage and sucks up all the enemies in the area. It was by far one of my favorite OP powers to use over the course of the game. I just wish that we had seen more of Benedict as a character, because I thought that she was removed from the game just much too soon. But overall, I think that Garuda as a character, as an icon, sits perfectly in the middle and the number 4 spot on my list. Taking the number 3 spot, I have to give it to Joshua's Phoenix. Phoenix is very, very important to this story. And spoiler alert, if you did happen to play the demo and you saw how one of the primary story ended with the Phoenix supposedly dying because Clyde turns into Ifrit and supposedly kills it, I knew that Joshua wasn't in fact dead, because it's the Phoenix, and anytime the Phoenix dies, it gets reborn. And I'm very certain that's going to happen at the end of the game, because something does happen to Joshua and the Phoenix power leaves him. So, obviously things need to happen. I do like this. This is only one of 2 icons you ever get to control over the course of the game. I believe you only get to control the Phoenix twice. You get to control him in the first icon battle when you're fighting Ifrit, when Clive transforms for the first time as a teenager, and you get to control him again during the Bahamut fight. And there's even a moment, spoiler alert, where the Phoenix and Ifrit combine. And so you pretty much have Ifrit with the wings of the Phoenix, and that's the ultimate form. And those fights are absolutely incredible. I think that Joshua as a character was very cool. Very, very helpful. He joins your party later on in the game and can hold his own. His power collection are pretty much the ones you start off with. The power of the Phoenix, even though technically Clive is not a dominant for the Phoenix, you get the Phoenix powers, and those are your base powers, and they are effective over the course of the entire game. So those are the ones you cannot remove, but those are your go-to powers, and they're extremely useful in just about any situation. And just story-wise, I just think that Joshua as a character and the Phoenix, just fantastic character, which is why it's really one of the 2 main iconic figures on the title screen of Final Fantasy 16, but well worth it. So which is why the Phoenix as Joshua's icon and dominant takes the number 3 spot on my list. Taking the number 2 spot has to go to Bahamut, who is also Dion's dominant. Bahamut over the course of Final Fantasy has always been my favorite summoning of any summon, and they do serious justice to Bahamut here. Not that there's never been an injustice to Bahamut, because I think Bahamut would be the most popular summon for a lot of fans of Final Fantasy, but they do an incredible job with Bahamut in every single department. Not only is his icon easily probably one of, if not the best fight in this game, on par with Titan, several levels better than the final boss. Dion as a character is an incredible character, has plenty of screen time, has a lot of character development. There's even parts of his character that make him just a really awesome character to be around. And his power set is by far my favorite in the entire game. His attacks are so OP that once you get Bahamut's powers, you will never want to leave them. You will never want not use them. In fact, his powers are so powerful they can be considered OP. Once you have those powers, nothing can stop you. He has by far the most powerful collection of extra powers used over the course of the game, and just extremely just high caliber character. High caliber character, high caliber icon battle, high character abilities. I mean, he is just right there at the peak. However, he can only take the number 2 spot on my list, but that does not remove the fact that he's by far just one of the most effective and most useful icons in the entire game. But he has to take the number 2 spot, unfortunately, to what I consider to be obviously what was going to be number 1. Well, obviously, number 1 had to go to Ifrit. Ifrit is at the heart of Final Fantasy XVI story. Unfortunately, I would say as a character, Ifrit is kind of the embodiment of Clive's inner strength, and he doesn't technically have any practical powers that you can use on your own, except for a few. There are a couple of key powers that are linked directly to Ifrit that Clive can access, but it's really during the icon battles that Ifrit really, obviously takes kick, because that's the primary icon that you will be controlling over the course of the games. And even having the ability to combine with Joshua's Phoenix powers, and even taking them and becoming one with those powers, makes Ifrit even more powerful. I don't really know what to say. More to say. I mean, he's the main character, and they do a fantastic job. I would say this. I would say this is like the first time that Ifrit really takes the front and is like the primary summoning, and they do an incredible job this time around. So I can only wonder if they would be able to repeat that with another summoning that perhaps doesn't get quite as much love as some of the other summonings, but they do an incredible job with Ifrit, which is why, for me, he's obviously going to take the number 1 spot on my list. So now that you guys know my personal ranking of all 8 of the primary icons over the course of Final Fantasy 16, how would you rank them? If you played this game, share your ranking with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you guys next time.